everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Hector Mirai, and I am going to be running a panel today this morning. This is an open discussion panel on the concept of faith in fandom. And to say that, disclaimers all aboard, this is a open space where regardless of whatever you believe, you are free to share what you believe. Every belief is welcome in this discussion. So I don't want anyone to think that this is a dogmatic thing of you have to ascribe to whatever I'm talking about. Your opinions and your beliefs are open and welcome in this discussion. So please nod, acknowledge that. Cool. Yes. We're all on the same page. Awesome. That being said, most of the things you're going to hear me say are going to come from a Christian perspective. My day job is a pastor. And normally I would be on the floor in Artist Alley. I write a book series called Faith Fandom, Finding God in Geek Culture. And this is not an advertisement because I'm not actually selling anything. If you want information on any of the books, there's 7 volumes of them out now. There's an 8th one coming up. But one of the things that we did during the pandemic was because we weren't present at Comic-Cons anymore for like a year, we took and this is the worst anti-sales advertisement ever. All the chapters of all the books are free on the website. So if you want anything just to look into, if you just want to get involved, try out, look at something on these discussions, feel free to go to the website. It's faithandfandom.org, and you can explore anything. There's buttons that you can literally click Marvel and just go through everything that we've got assembled on Marvel, DC, Star Wars, anime. Everything is in its own little categories. That being said, today our discussion is primarily going to be on the concept of letting our fandoms be encouraging to our lives spiritually, and ways that they can be encouraging, things that you might have felt discouragement in your journeys. I'm going to take this vest off because it jingles and I don't want to sound like Christmas the whole time. But that being said, for me, growing up as a geek, growing up as someone who was passionate about geeky things, I found that growing up in a pretty generic geek culture, like I was born in the 80s, I grew up in the 90s of like Batman the Animated Series and X-Men Adventures and all that stuff when, the height of Jim Lee drawing X-Men and stuff. I grew up in that time period. But one of the things that I saw so often is that there was a hard mainstream concept that you couldn't be geeky and have any kind of spiritual passion at the same time. Those things were like counterintuitive, and often that they would, people would say that kind of stuff is distracting you if you're actually trying to grow spiritually or anything of that nature. Let me just ask you this: wherever you're at and whatever background you come from, have you ever experienced just straight up discouragement pursuing geeky things in a spiritual climate? Okay, so I'm not alone in that. Some of us are doing that, and even and I'm not knocking other people's ways that they're trying to do things. But a lot of times one of the things that we see so often are even things like the folks that are maybe the angry street preachers in the street on the way here. I didn't hear anybody yelling on the way here today. I saw signs, but I didn't hear yelling. One of the most disturbing things I've seen in my life in doing any of this was 2 years ago I was a guest at San Diego, and I've heard angry street preachers at cons here in the Carolinas occasionally. What I heard at San Diego was like one of the most disturbing things I've ever heard in my life. And this is how bad it had gotten in the culture there. You can literally go into San Diego Comic-Con and buy a badge and a t-shirt that says, "I survived the street preachers." That's a thing. Because we've come to a place where in a lot of spiritual climates and a lot of from biblical to any other faith base, that we come to a place where we think these are divided things. And one of the things that I've come to learn in going through counseling and providing people counseling and being a pastor and going these things is that anytime we're doing things that we feel like we're forced to actually have to divide ourselves and cause divisions in ourselves and hide ourselves, we're doing damage to ourselves. We're not going to be healthy and whole individuals if we feel like we have to hide certain things. And I grew up, in that 90s era where my youth pastor would be of the mindset of like, if it's got electric guitars, it's the devil. Bring your CDs, we're going to break them. That was literally something I grew up in, and trying to like grow closer to God in my own way. I would find where like they literally say this: Or like if I was reading comic books, they'd oh, that's a distraction or idolatry or anything else. I want to just let you know straight up out the gate, and this is coming from me personally, that if you have ever been discouraged by members of of any faith community because you're passionate about something else, I'm sorry that that's something you've experienced. And I would hope to let you know that whoever spoke to you in that fashion doesn't speak for everyone. And, and again, this is my personal spiritual beliefs. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. Those are my beliefs. And I believe that God welcomes you and wants to welcome you home as a father, not to discourage you because you like anime. Or like if you passionately love the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern film, God still loves you. Wherever you're at, I don't know where your life is. But the thing I want to tell you is that the things that you're passionate about, and when we're talking about faith and fandom, the things that you're passionate about, I truly believe they can help you draw closer to where you're trying to be spiritually than they need to be something to deter you. And one of the things I've seen so often is that a lot of times my entertainment, my pop culture, the things that I enjoy end up helping me draw closer personally. Because one of the things I think we're going to see so often is that the truths that you find in spiritual materials, whether it's the Bible or wherever you personally look for it, but for me, it's the Bible. The truths that we find in these things are usually universal things that we see echoed in every entertainment form we see. Things like betrayal, for a need for forgiveness, a longing for community, hope in darkness. Like we have these things where these things reach out to us, and if they can speak to us in terms of our entertainment, then that should be something that can help us grow, not to be deterred from it. And let me just ask you this because I want your input, not just mine. I started off a little on the negative about the negative things, so let me just ask you this. What has been the most negative experience or a negative experience that stuck with you in your journey personally when it comes terms to like the balance of the things that you're passionate about in entertainment versus the things that you are passionate about spiritually? Okay, I'm gonna get you. Yeah, go ahead. What? How deep are you? No Loki, because that's pretty recent. Okay. Okay. You're fine. Go ahead. Okay. Well, I can see that too. Just on a fun side note, just that you might, if you haven't seen this recently, in Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil, Daredevil and Reed Richards sit down and have a chess game where they actually talk about faith, and it's very encouraging. Just that's in Chip Zdarsky's recent run. I want to say it's somewhere in the 15s of that run, but just with that, okay.
I'm going to try to speak clearly and loudly here.
Okay.
I'm not sure if any of you in Christian circles have ever heard Adventures in Odyssey.
Yes.
Okay. The episode about castles and cauldrons. Need I say more?
Okay.
I mean, do I need to say more about that? I stayed away from Dungeons and Dragons and the sheer enjoyment because of that episode.
If y'all are crowded in the back, y'all can come right up here. There's not chairs, but there is floor space, and there are about 4 chairs right up front if you want to wedge in wherever they're at. So there's floor space up here on the sides and on both sides, and about 4 or 5 chairs if you want to scatter out and find chairs.
Yes, castles and cauldrons. Avoid it at all costs. I am dead serious. You will never hear on the radio a more horrendously anti-Christian betrayal of what Christianity stands for than that episode. It is the exact same level of Christian, labeled as Christian, hate as those two idiots out on the street.
Adventures in Odyssey was a Christian TV show back in the 70s and 80s.
It's a radio show where I heard.
Huh? Right? Oh, they have a cartoon show, but they also have a radio show.
Yeah.
All right. So part of the discussion, what we're having if you just came in, we're talking about the fact that the things that we're passionate about shouldn't be detrimental to our spiritual development. Again, if you also just came in the room, everybody's opinion, everybody's perspective, everybody's belief structure is welcome in the discussion. It's not a dogmatic thing. I'm personally coming from a Christian perspective, and your opinions are welcome and invited as well. So just to cover everybody that walked in the room, I didn't want to leave y'all out. But one of the questions we just asked is, what is some of the most discouraging things you've heard in terms of the things that you're passionate about spiritually and the things you're passionate about in your entertainment and your fandom? All right, good.
So I'm probably older than most people in this room, and so I came up in the early 80s and late 70s, where the concept, the core concept was come out from among them in the church, that there was that which was of the world, but that which was of the church.
Rosa.
And so that meant watching Star Wars would send you to hell. Watching Star Trek might send you to hell. For some reason, Battlestar Galactica was okay. This was when Dungeons and Dragons had just come out, and there was a lot of concern, especially in the very small church I grew up in, that if you played Dungeons and Dragons, you would catch the demons. There were entire books in my mother's personal collection about toys that were from Satan. He-Man fans? Yeah, you're going to hell.
Says the lady dressed like sorceress in the back.
That was the kind of junk I grew up in, and I'll say this much: thank God for my grandfather, who didn't care. Thanks to him, I got to watch Wonder Woman, Batman, Voltron, all of this stuff.
All right, I saw some. Yes, ma'am.
So, when I was probably about 7, I was a kid when the Pokemon was really popular, and that was, so I was actually over at a friend's house, and his mom was part of my grandma's church. We were all praying for my mom. Was very laid back. There were a couple things that she didn't like, but overall she let me do my thing. So this was the first time I ever ran into someone that got on us because it was all about the evolution of Pokemon. And that was horrible.
Pocket monsters aren't a problem. If they evolve, then it's the issue.
He had, my friend had Pokemon toys that he got at Burger King, and his mom was making him get rid of them because she didn't want them in the house. So it was like, hey, I know that your mom's okay with this, you want to take them, so I took them. But afterwards, I went home and I just remember thinking, like, what? Why? Why can't he like Pokemon and be a Christian at the same time? And that was like the first time I ever grappled with that question. My mom helped me through it, but that was the first time I realized that, being a geek and being a Christian, a lot of people do opposites. I can't cope with this.
By the way, just you folks at the back, there is room on the sides. There's not chairs, but if you want space where you're not cramped by the door, you're welcome to come on either of these sides. And I think there's a chair up here and 2 over there. All right, I think I saw, yes, go ahead. By the way, the question we asked are, what are some of the most discouraging things you've heard in terms of your entertainment and your faith? Okay.
I was a youth pastor kid, so like I lived in pretty much a glass house.
There's room up here on the sides, guys, too, if you want to come up here.
And I remember they would hand out pamphlets about Pokemon and about that they were the pocket demons, the pocket monsters,
And one more time, I'm sorry for making an announcement. I'm just trying to make everybody as accommodated as possible. There is room on the sides up here. There's not chairs. There is one chair there, I think for sure, and there's some chairs back there. So feel free to move around as you need to, but you can take up these wings as well. We're talking about how the things that we are entertained by shouldn't be spiritually deterrent, and we're asking people for some of the negative things that they've heard along the way. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
One thing that gets me is, okay, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, just like she was just mentioning. And all these people that go to church, you know, from Harry Potter, they all love going to Disneyland. And Disneyland is Magic Kingdom. So, I mean, it really, whenever they get on me, I go right back out over there to Disneyland.
Okay. All right. Yeah, man.
So it's not about a negative experience. I come from a Catholic background, but I find it funny that like Pokemon problems because at least with the Catholic faith, there is an evolution of it like style within the faith. So that's not an issue there. I think it's more like a Southern Baptist kind of flavor. No, I don't mean that in a tough way.
No, we understand.
I think like for some reason I guess they haven't worked out the whole dynamics of evolution in the faith, but for Catholicism, it's not a problem. It's not like that. So it's weird knowing that like other people have pursued this with evolution when not me considering it's solved.
Yeah. All right. I don't want to push anybody else. I just want to keep moving. Does anybody else have anything else they want to contribute to the dialogue there? Okay. One of the things that we're going to find out, though, is realistically, first of all, people of faith often poorly represent people of faith. People of faith, of any faith, usually are some of their worst models. And, you know, we usually don't need people being antagonistic to the faith community because we do a bad enough job ourselves. But one of the things is we see constant things like that, and as they refer to, as you're talking about with the Pokemon, Harry Potter, usually it's referred to as like the satanic panic, of where people want to label anything that takes people's attention as the devil, because if people are that interested in it, it has to be evil. When in reality, that's not the case. And that ends up being more detrimental to people actually pursuing God, because they would rather turn away from a God they don't know than a passion that they actually do care about. So one of the things that I want to ask you this, on the flip side, what are some of the things that you found encouraging through the things that you're passionate about, or even through your faith community about them working together? What are some things that you found encouraging? You know, we've talked about discouragement. So what are some things that you found encouraging?
Your ministry.
Well, thank you.
It's a rather obscure title, so I don't know if you know it or not. There's a book called Finding God in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And it was presented as almost like a Bible study.
Yeah.
And that was actually encouraging, because I enjoyed Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson did. Oh gosh, I mean, it was just, yeah. You cannot redo Lord of the Rings after this, because Peter Jackson, yeah. And reading that book, it was phenomenal, and I started seeing the whole movie series brand new.
One of the things I want to encourage you, if you have other things you want to share with that, feel free to jump in with that discussion. But just to say this, one of the things that I've seen so often is that the people that are usually negative towards these type of things, about being passionate about entertainment in any way, are usually have some form of frustration or insecurity in themselves that they feel that they can compensate with by tearing others down. Sometimes it's not an intentional thing. Sometimes they're just misinformed, and they just don't know better. But I know that there's usually something that is the scapegoat, rather than dealing with what's going on in people's hearts. In the 80s, it was rock music and MTV, back when that had music. And I was a high school freshman when Pokemon came out, and I saw the whole Pokemon thing. I was working in Walden Books when Harry Potter came out, and I saw all of that. But one of the things that I've seen so often is that it's a lot easier for people that are struggling in their own spiritual selves to say what's wrong rather than encouraging people in how to actually move forward. It's a lot easier to point out the negatives than do self-improvement. And I want to encourage you in this, that I firmly believe, this is my personal belief, and if you want me to support it with Scripture, I can do that. But we'll cross that bridge in a minute. That God would rather you draw closer to Him and use something else to get you there than for you to run away from Him because you actually enjoy something. That's where I'm at. Now, one of the things I see so often is the fact that there is so much that echoes through all of our entertainment. There's so much that echoes through all of our entertainment that shows, we often think that spiritual concepts have to be chapter and verse or Bible verses, or they have to have some specific things. Well, I've seen so often that the stuff that we are looking for that actually can be reminders to actually pursue spiritual things, we're going to see in the most odd places or the most random places in entertainment, because the truth is we all are searching for something. We're searching for purpose. We're looking for community. We're looking for forgiveness. We're looking for value. And the entertainment that we choose can be a good model to help us get there. One of my favorite things, and if you've been in one of my panels before, I almost always play this clip, but the rest of it's new. So if you're like, oh man, he played that last year, it's okay. There's going to be new stuff. But one of my favorite clips on anything of this is out of Firefly. And Firefly actually is the reason I got started doing all of this. I originally, when I started writing geeky devotionals, I was really just going to write a Firefly Bible study book, and that was going to be it. And then it turned into what it is. But there's this one clip, and one of my favorite things is Joss Whedon is a very loudly professing atheist. But on the flip side, he created one of the best fictional representations of a spiritual person, someone that actually had a relationship with God in Shepherd Book. I believe that Shepherd Book's one of the best fictional preachers that exist. But they had this really great open dialogue about faith in the episode Janestown. If you aren't familiar with Firefly and you don't know what I'm about to show you, there's a girl that has some mental and psychological issues, thanks to the government. And she's being babysat by the pirate ship's pastor. So this is what we see with this real quick.
What are we up to, sweetheart?
Fixing your Bible.
What?
Bible's broken. Contradictions, false logistics. Doesn't make sense.
No, you can't.
So we'll integrate non-progressional evolution theory with God's creation of Eden. 11 inherent minutes worth of peril is already there. Point number, time number. One goes into the house 11 times, but always comes out one. Noah's Ark is a problem.
Really?
We'll have to call it early quantum state phenomenon. Only way to fit 5,000 species of man on the same boat.
Give me that. Maybe you don't fix the Bible.
It's broken. Does it make sense?
It's not about making sense. It's about believing in something. And letting that belief be real enough to change your life. It's about faith. You don't fix faith, River. It fixes you. You hang on to those now.
All right. Now, in saying this, I've heard people that were of the deeply, very, very serious level of themselves that are like, were so offended by that because they said the Bible's broken. Listen, if you've ever tried to actually read Scripture yourself and you've not been in the right place, it's going to seem broken. And to hear that conversation, that was really encouraging to me. Now, I don't think like Joss Whedon said, hey, we need to really help people have a better biblical understanding. I don't think that was his purpose. And one of the things is a lot of the stuff that we're intending for, or that I'm encouraging you to do, is to look for spiritual content in the things that you're passionate about that can be an encouragement to you rather than being concerned that other people think that that's not where you need to be. Firefly is one of the most spiritually encouraging shows to me, and it's only 13 episodes long, and some comic books and a movie, and some odd board games that are really too hard to play. I own them because they're pretty, but I don't play them. But that's one of the things too, and I see this, and are there any Office fans? Moderately? Okay, cool. The Office is one of my favorite shows, and my favorite episode of The Office is The Christening, which is the episode. I'm going to play a clip from this in a second. And the reality of this is, why I want to share this with you, how many of you are here today because you want community? Not in this room, but at this con in general. You came because you find community you connect with. Y'all, look, searching for community is not just a social thing, it is a spiritual thing. We are built for that. And we are in a place where we are looking for community. And one of my reasons this is my favorite episode, there are much funnier episodes. There are better written episodes. They're much better. This episode is my favorite of The Office because it shows something that I feel is really true, that if we actually find ourselves in good community, we realize we're missing something. This is just a quick clip of Michael Scott's. He just sat down for church to attend. I can't remember at this point. But and then they're having a fellowship dinner after Jim and Pam's kid gets baptized. But just this shows me a lot of times, the need for community. This is one of my favorite clips with it.
Good morning. Good morning.
By the way, he's so, if you are remotely familiar with The Office, he's so awkward that he's not used to people being nice to him. So when people show basic godly courtesy, he's floored. So there we go.
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you? Good morning. I'm feeling this. Call it the Holy Spirit or the Passion of the Christ. I'm loving these people.
Look at that. That's fun. We need to do stuff together outside of work. Let's go help Africa.
Let's go to the airport. We'll start small. We'll have a car wash. We'll send some cheerleaders to regionals.
We could be the hungry.
When do we have to do something together? I volunteer at a clinic on my own time?
Yeah, well, that's just a pickup scene. Okay, we don't have to volunteer, but I think we should hang out more together.
We are hanging out. Right now. You want some more of this?
Look at these people. These are church-going people, and they know how to party.
Church isn't a party, Michael.
Well, it's
Welcome to the party. Everybody have their Kool-Aid.
no, okay. What is wrong with you guys? What is wrong with you? What is so horrible about wanting to get together and do something nice? Why did you guys even come today? What's so great about your lives that you think you're better than everybody else? You can make fun of everybody else.
For context, a youth group is going on a mission trip to Mexico.
Good luck to you. Bye. Do good. Do good. Bye. Have fun. We're proud of you. Hey, is this the bus to Mexico? I'll take a shirt. Are you coming? If you'll have me, yes. Heck yeah, really? I gotta get off this bus. Stop the bus, okay?
Are you okay, sir?
I didn't sign up for this. You guys are young. That's great. You want to give back to society? I've done that. I need a thing.
You have plenty left to give. You're doing a great
Blah, blah, blah. We can go back and forth all day. It's not going to solve anything.
If we went to Mexico, we'd probably screw everything up.
Do you want that for little Jessica? No, you don't. And the answer is clear. Stop the bus. 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 Stop the bus.
You're one of them.
Okay. Now, that's my favorite episode of The Office, just in the simple fact that it literally shows that if we're all so much looking for community that if we actually find it somewhere, we click to it. How many of y'all have a group of friends or just people that you've connected with in your life that you never thought you would be friends with, but you just connected well over community and you just stuck? We're built for that, and we're longing for that. And when people, we're talking about like the satanic panic of things, that some folks would get into. They see that people actually getting involved in community, and I think low key they're just jealous that they're not getting involved in the community that they're trying to prescribe for people. But the reality is, if we're connecting with people and we're growing together, that's a good step towards the community I personally believe in my faith that God's calling us to. We need to be willing to actually help foster community, not to knock people if they find it in a wrong place. Some of the best things I've seen, a friend of mine that I used to do ministry with here in the Raleigh area, is named Chris. Chris left here, went to Georgia to start a ministry called Columbus Got Game, where he partnered with the local school systems to set up online gaming training centers where people that are competing competitively in like Fortnite and Overwatch, stuff like that, they can actually train on good equipment, have groups together, they have board game night stuff. He's literally just built an entire organization on helping students in one of the highest crime rate areas find community. I know that growing up, that would have been condemned where I was at and when I was at in my teenage years. And that's one of the most fruitful things I've seen. We need to help people foster community, but finding community is not just a social need, it's a spiritual need. And one of the things, too, that I've seen so often is, as we talked about the negatives and the positives, just to be simple, not even just on nerdy or geeky things or passionate things, how many of you have been hurt by a faith community, period? That with people, and whether it be as a collective people or an individual just representing a faith they represented for you, like I said, we can be some of the most damaging people in our own light. One of the things that just leveled me, I didn't watch Clone Wars until the pandemic. I didn't have access to it, and I watched it on Disney Plus once we're all staying in our houses for a minute. And this episode, which is season 5 of Clone Wars, wrecked me. Like, it wrecked me because in a lot of ways it represented a lot of things I've been hurt by in the church and by people of the faith. One of the times I was literally sitting in this building at my booth, I think it was 2019. I had a young lady, and you could be in here because you were in costume, I don't even know. There's a young lady in cosplay that came up to my booth, and she was crying. And she just came up to my booth because the street preachers out in the street had literally told her, they called her some unsavory names and said some horrible things to her. And she literally came up to my booth in tears. She's like, I just need to know, does God actually hate me? And that's what she got. I don't even know if she had a relationship with God at all, but just trying to come to this event, she was told that she was given the impression that God hated her. And she came to my booth to ask me, was that correct? Sometimes people of faith are the worst when it comes to actually representing what they say they represent. This episode, it's a 2-3-part episode, maybe 2-part. Ahsoka has been framed for committing a crime against the Republic, and everybody in the Jedi Council except Anakin turned on her. Big, long story arc. She's redeemed. The person's caught. They prove her innocence, but she'd been kicked out. She'd been abandoned, and everybody threw her under the bus. And in watching that, I saw stuff that had happened to me as a pastor, as a youth pastor, as someone growing up in church. I saw in those episodes stuff I had seen in my own life on a regular basis. And this, I think, really represents well something that we have all been in some place or another. So they've just proved her innocence, and they're offering her spot back since they proved that she wasn't the traitor.
Most humble apologies, little Ahsoka. The Council was wrong to accuse you.
You have shown such great strength and resilience in your struggle to prove your innocence. This is the true sign of a Jedi Knight.
This was actually your great trial. Now we see that. We understand that the Force works in mysterious ways. And because of this trial, you have become a greater Jedi than you would have otherwise.
Back into the Order. You may come. asking you back, Ahsoka. I'm asking you back.
I'm sorry, Master, but I'm not coming back.
Ahsoka, I need to talk to you. Why are you doing this?
The council didn't trust me, so how can I trust myself?
What about me? I believed in you. I stood by you.
I know you believe in me, Anakin, and I'm grateful for that. But this isn't about you. I can't stay here any longer. Not now.
The Jedi Order is your life. You can't just throw it away like this. Ahsoka, you are making a mistake.
Maybe. But I have to sort this out on my own. Without the council. And without you.
I understand. More than you realize. I understand wanting to walk away from the Order.
I know.
Now, replace the phrase Jedi Order with church in almost any part of that conversation, and I feel like a lot of us were like, felt that. Like hearing things like the Force works in mysterious ways. Come on. We've heard some things, if you've been around the faith community long enough, you've heard some people where people have done some horrible things and then just try and push it off like, our bad, God bless you, come on back. Like, there are a lot of people I've seen, and one of the most painful things of being a pastor, because I spent 10 years running a summer camp for kids. I spent 10 years as a college pastor. And I saw so many college kids walk away from their faith because of being wounded by people that had brought them up in their faith. We all see that, as we talked about the common themes we see in our entertainment, the fact that we can find God in places that we're not normally looking, that we are longing for community, that we've been hurt. One of the other things is that I see a constant thing is one of my favorite parts of any storyline is a good forgiveness story. Like a solid forgiveness story. Y'all, the first time I watched Hamilton and it got to that forgiveness, can you imagine? And she reached out and touched his hand, I bawled. We watched it in my driveway. We did a big thing. We put it up on our garage and watched my driveway. It was like, forgiveness, can you imagine? She reached out and touched it. I was like, oh, I'm like sweating, crying. And we love a good forgiveness story. And I think one of the biggest reasons why we all love a good forgiveness story is because we're all looking for a good forgiveness story. I think we're looking for that and we want to see that. And sometimes we don't always see it in other places. And I was behind the times on Clone Wars and I was equally behind the times on Avatar. For my defense, the entire time Avatar was on TV, I lived in the woods and didn't have cable or internet. I was running a summer camp and dial-up was as fast as it got. I didn't move to the internet world until after Avatar was off TV. So forgive me. There's my forgiveness story. But one of the things is the whole time, I've been doing Faith and Fandom, people are like, are you going to do an Avatar chapter? Are you going to do this? By the way, I did a whole chapter on the Ahsoka, Anakin, church hurt thing. Y'all, I literally had to lay my head on the table while I was typing because it hurt my heart so much, because it brought up so much in me. But on the Avatar thing, the people always told me, oh, wait till you meet Uncle Iroh. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever. And then, I'm like, it can't be that important. And then I got to Uncle Iroh, and I'm like, well, dang, that was good. But one of the things that I saw, people reference so often is this moment with Iroh and Zuko. And if you can watch this, there's the difference. When you watch a clip or you're watching your entertainment and you're looking for spiritual content, you'll find spiritual content. If you're not, you won't. It's just like, how many of you have seen a movie and there's an actor in it that you didn't know was in there until like way later? Like, oh, I didn't even know that person was in there, and you know you watched it. Like the movie Wanted with James McAvoy, Angelina Jolie. I didn't remember that Chris Pratt was in that. Like, Chris Pratt's in that, and I'm like, what?
Chris Pratt's in that?
Exactly. Chris Pratt has direct interaction with James McAvoy. James McAvoy hits him in the face with a keyboard. I wasn't looking for it. So I didn't see it. Here's what I'm telling you. If you're looking for spiritual content when you're watching, now here's a big deal. I want to say this. There's a difference between looking and shoehorning. When you look, you might see something because you're looking. You should never try and force it in there. Just a personal opinion. That's just where I'm at. But there's this moment in Avatar where Zuko's been a jerk for 2.5 seasons. And he's coming back. Well, I don't know. It was probably 2 seasons at that point. Either way, he's coming back to his uncle who's been trying to pursue him lovingly for the entire storyline. And we have this moment.
Uncle, I know you must have mixed feelings about seeing me. But I want you to know, I am so sorry, Uncle. I am so sorry and ashamed of what I did. I don't know how I can ever make it up to you, but how can you forgive me so easily? I thought you would be furious with me.
I was never angry with you. I was sad because I was afraid you'd lost your way.
I did lose my way.
But you found it again.
Now, y'all, I was jacked up crying on my couch. I watched that with my kids for the first time, once we finished Clone Wars, and I'm literally sitting there, Cheeto-stinged fingers, wiping my tears. To say all this, when we see love, unconditional love, and we see forgiveness, it hits part of us deep in our soul because we're built for that and we're longing for that. And I think that anytime we can see stuff like that, there's a lot of that in Doctor Who. There's a lot of that. There's a good bit of that in Loki. There's a good bit of some different stuff in there. When we find good forgiveness stories, it means something to us because I think we're built for that. I think we're made for that. So I just want to encourage you. I want to challenge you. Don't let other people's negative perceptions discourage you from being passionate about things. Because I think the stuff that we're passionate about can actually help us grow. I think that we can do a lot of these things. I spend a lot of my time when we're watching stuff with my family where we legit pause stuff and I have to take notes. Correct? As my kids nod at the back. We'll be in the place where we'll be in the middle of doing something. My daughter will just straight pause it and not even look at me and just wait for me to finish. She'll hear a quote and she'll just go, and do it, or we'll pause and rewind. We were watching Dragon Ball Z on DVD the other day, and there was a moment, I'm like, oh, that's great, rewind it. And we're trying to rewind a DVD, which is not as smooth as you remember. And but we have those moments where I'm not sitting there I don't sit down on my couch with my kids and be like, all right, let's find spiritual content. It's not what we're doing. But when it hits me, I'm like, I should take note of that. I do that. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I didn't remember as a kid. Oh, this is cool. But then I'll never forget the speech he gave to Frieza when I saw it again. When he was like, I am all that is good in this world. I am all that is this. I am truth. He just ended with, I am truth. And I was like,
Well, right after that too, man, when he it was before that part. It was because it was pre-Frieza when he had beat Vegeta, and Vegeta's about to crawl off, and Krillin literally grabs his sword to shank him, and he's like, "Don't kill him. He'd offer him forgiveness." I was like, "There's so much good stuff, but if you're looking for it, and you actually just pay attention. I'm not saying you got to write books. I'm not saying you got to preach sermons. I'm not even saying you got to post it on Facebook. But if you let it be a reminder to you, that's a good start. That's a good thing, because if you let this do it. So, again, I told you anyone's opinions, perspectives, and other faith background are welcome. If you don't mind, I would like to share a couple scriptures if you're cool with that. If anyone is violently opposed to that, I'm sorry. You can say the panel just ended, but I just want to share a couple. I want to share a couple quick scriptures with you, and this is, again, I'm not telling you you have to believe these or to say anything. You're not going to hear anything condemning out of this, but I want you to understand I believe these things to be true, and I think they can be encouraging to you. Colossians 3:23 is this one verse, and it's one of my favorite verses in Scripture. And Colossians 3:23, since I turned over there, I know it, but I want to turn to it just so I'm being a professional. Yeah, that's the pastor mode. You don't want to do it until you do it. Colossians 3:23 says this: whatever you do, do it with your whole heart for the Lord, not for man. And here's what I say: if you're really passionate about something, let that be an encouragement that you actually do something that can draw you closer rather than pull you away. If you're doing it in the point where you're literally saying, I'm really passionate about this, I guarantee you can find a way to connect that actually be spiritually encouraging. Cosplay community. Y'all, they're some of the coolest cosplay communities I've met have been people that actually encourage each other spiritually. You can do that. People that are passionate about gaming, people that are passionate about anime, people that are passionate about Star Wars. I've seen it done, and you don't have to let it be something discouraging to you. And if you come across a point where someone says, well, that stuff's not holy, you can't use it. That stuff's not holy, you can't use it. Let me just throw something at you. Acts chapter 17, there's this moment where I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's in Acts chapter 17 if you want to, because for the sake of time, I don't want to read this whole big passage. There's a god in their region that all the people just kind of leave up, and they call it the unknown god, where they basically say, they use it as their catch-all. Say, in case we're wrong about everything else, we're going to worship this one unknown God to cover our bases. And so people in that culture have just accepted it. So the Apostle Paul straight up uses, he's like, you guys see this unknown God you all talk about? Let me tell you about the God you really don't know. And he uses that to go into this thing. He takes something that by all standards isn't holy and uses it to actually help them grow spiritually. And I'm going to tell you this, if that's something that Paul can do, then, Star Wars can do it. You can find something else to actually do that with. The one thing I will say this that is not a negative, but just a cautionary tale to say, let me cover my responsibility basis with this. The stuff that you're passionate about, you should be able to do that. But if the stuff that you're passionate about is actually damaging to you, then that's a damaging to you thing, and that's not going to help you grow in any capacity. I'm not here to tell you what not to watch, what not to read, or what not to play. That's not my role. But I will tell you this, if you know it's doing damage to you, it's not going to help you grow. So that has to be something you do. And there's a chapter in Scripture, Romans 14, that is straight up the best outline in the Bible that I read that says what you need to hold yourself accountable to. Where if it's causing you to stumble, if it's causing other people to struggle, if it's not a list of do's and don'ts, it's a self-examination piece. So if you're doing something that's causing you to stumble, it's you to handle yourself. So I think you can use the stuff that you're passionate about, but you also need to be cautioned to make sure you're not doing stuff that you're passionate about that's hurting you. And that's not me going to say, don't do this. I'm not your dad. I'm not your dad. I'm not most of your pastors. There's a couple, but I'm not most of your pastors. But to say this, if it's spiritually causing you damage, then that's another conversation that you need to work out on your own. And if you need people to actually work with you through that, there are going to be people that will love you, that will help you. And if you don't have the people that you love you, I don't know you yet, but I will help you. So you can contact me too. But all this to say, I personally believe that the stuff that we're passionate about can help us draw closer spiritually. Now, for me, as a Christian, I believe that God is who the Bible says he is. I believe who Jesus, the Bible says he is. And that's what I'm trying to grow towards spiritually. And I believe that the things that I'm passionate about have helped me do that. Like literally, that moment with Iroh and Zuko, that helped me spiritually. There's been moments where Doctor Who has helped me better than some of the sermons I've preached in my own church. And doing that, I want to encourage you, let the stuff that you're actually passionate about be an encouragement, not something you feel like you have to hide. Because how many of you feel like you come to con to let your geek flag fly? That you can't do it like in your muggle world. Now, I'm not saying you could dress like All Might in your day job.
You'd be surprised.
If you could rock it, go for it. But I would say this: don't ever feel like you have to hide what you're passionate about to actually be someone that's actually growing spiritually, because that's not the case. And the people that push that on you are usually not really concerned about your spiritual well-being in the first place. So I say all that to say thank you for listening. Thank you for hanging out and being here during this time. I appreciate you. I wasn't even going to come to GalaxyCon this year. I don't have a booth. This is the first time since it was SuperCon I don't have a booth, because when everything was shut down, a camp in Pittsburgh booked me to be their speaker for the week, and then GalaxyCon said, "Psych, we're back," and I'm like, oh. So I was previously booked, and I literally drove from Pittsburgh last night, and so. I didn't say it for the claps, but thank you. But I drove from Pittsburgh last night, but the thing is, I wasn't even going to try and get panels, because I think if I don't have a booth, why would they give me panels, et cetera, et cetera. And people that care actually encouraged me, said, no, you need to do this. And I said, I'm going to ask, but they're going to say no. And I literally, I asked 1 week ago. And they gave me a panel today, and tomorrow morning, they actually gave me a geek church service. So tomorrow morning, if you want to be part of it, tomorrow morning, 11 a.m., this same room, we're going to have an actual full church service. It will have some geeky themes and sermon topics and stuff like that, but it will be church service tomorrow morning. That being said, I appreciate you coming. Normally, I would say go visit me at my booth. But I'm just going to hang out here. But we're also going to just take a minute. You can ask questions, or if you have any things you want to discuss like that, feel free. I've got my business cards up here for stuff, and I am not a responsible adult yet because I haven't had new ones printed. But if I'm looking at the right thing, that's the wrong thing. Right here. I had that up earlier. This is my website, which is faithandfandom.org. Simple faithandfandom.org. If you want to delve a little more into the stuff that I actually write and do stuff like that, everything I've written on this topic is there for free. There's 165 devotionals, from everything from anime to Star Wars to The Office to everything else. There's 165 devotionals, and there's a new book in the works, but because we've been in a pandemic world, I'm putting all the new chapters up there now already. So everything that's written is up there, even though the book's not out. You have access to that. There are 230 podcasts or more with like 3-minute devotionals that are like nerdy devotionals in there as well. So there's also audio chapters of books. If you want to check anything to reach me, faithandfandom.org, you can do that. There are 7 books, but literally you can get all the chapters for free. So, I don't know if you should buy them anymore. But that's being said, that's my stuff. So before we're officially done, are there any questions that you want to ask or discuss before we're out? Yes, sir. I'm in Lumberton, so I'm like an hour and a half. Yeah, I'm from Lumberton. Yeah. Who? X-Men. Not a lot, and I've been back and forth doing a section on Joss Whedon's X-Men, Astonishing X-Men, his 24 arc run. It's my favorite print run of X-Men. I've got one that's been in the works, but not officially in there. There's some Deadpool, but eh. No, but that is literally one of my favorite episodes, and the speech that he gives Wolverine is on our Facebook and stuff. So that's on there. And Wolverine's like prayer and everything at the end of it. That's on our website. Yes, sir. Yes. It's a vertical church in Lumberton, and it's a low-key Southern Baptist church. It's not really a Southern Baptist church. So, like on paper, but we're not like I could wear this and get away with it on Sunday morning preaching and probably get away with it. Probably won't though. But I'm not telling you to come to my church, but if you find yourself in Lumberton, come on. Yeah, I pastor a church in Lumberton. And there any questions you want to ask just before we're out of here? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something, because and this goes both ways from non-Christians to Christians or Christians to non-Christians. Never judge an idea by its worst representation. So don't ever look at all of Jesus and think that one person that claims to follow Jesus is a representation. If you're a Christian, don't let one person who might be geeky, who hates Christians, don't think that that's everybody who's not a Christian. And that's something I've learned that's helped me as a pastor over the years.
Well, thank y'all so much. And if you do want to talk or anything else, you can come up. I'm going to hang out. There's not another panel immediately coming. So you can come up and talk if you like to. Thank y'all so much.